Welcome back to Scottish Sleep Stories. In tonight's episode, we journey through 12,000 years of Westerosi history, from the Age of Heroes and the Long Night to dragons, prophecy, rebellion, and the fall of the Wall. We will trace the hidden threads that connect Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, and A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms into one continuous story of ice and fire. But here is a question for you. Do you believe that everything in Westeros, every war, every dragon, every betrayal, was always leading to one single moment in Winterfell? If you enjoy deep lore, quiet storytelling, and epic histories told in a calm and immersive way, don't forget to subscribe to Scottish Sleep Stories. And share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to know what part of Westerosi history fascinates you the most. Now, let us begin. The Wall. For 8,000 years, it has stood sentinel against the encroaching darkness. 8,000 years of relentless winters, 8,000 years of silent observation, 8,000 years of unwavering vigilance, all in anticipation of a threat that most had dismissed as mere folklore, and then in a single cataclysmic night, it crumbles. But what eludes the grasp of many is that the saga of the Wall, the profound reasons for its construction, and the intertwined destiny of the family who dedicated 3 centuries to preparing for its inevitable fall, extend far beyond the tragic demise of Ned Stark, predates even the legendary Aegon the Conqueror. Its origins are rooted in a distant past, a staggering 12,000 years ago. Every event, every conflict, every alliance depicted in Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, and now, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, is intricately connected, threads woven into a grand tapestry of Westerosi history. This is the comprehensive history of Westeros, and by its conclusion you will unravel the enigma of how a seemingly insignificant dagger, forged in the fires before the doom of Valyria, ultimately became the instrument that extinguished the Night King in the heart of Winterfell. And you will understand why this was not a mere stroke of luck, but a confluence of destiny. Perhaps you have witnessed the power struggles and betrayals of Game of Thrones. Perhaps you have been captivated by the Targaryen civil war in House of the Dragon. Now, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms beckons, venturing into an era previously unexplored by these sagas. However, a common misconception is to treat these as isolated narratives, a prequel here, a sequel there. The truth is far more profound. George R.R. Martin has meticulously crafted a single continuous narrative that spans an astonishing 12,000 years. And when you discern the threads that bind these stories together, your understanding of Westeros will be irrevocably transformed. So let us embark on this journey with purpose, transcending the monotony of a mere chronological recitation of dates. Instead, I will illuminate the 3 fundamental threads that permeate the entirety of Westerosi history. The first thread is prophecy, specifically a single potent dream that shaped 3 centuries of Targaryen dominion. The second thread centers around dragons and why their near extinction threatened to plunge the world into eternal darkness. The third thread delves into the realm of bastards, and how the legitimization of one king's illegitimate offspring ignited nearly 7 decades of relentless warfare, 5 generations of bloodshed, and paradoxically played a crucial role in the salvation of humanity. Let us begin at the very beginning. 12,000 years before Robert Baratheon ascended the Iron Throne, Westeros was not the domain of humankind. The continent was inhabited by 2 distinct races: the children of the forest, enigmatic beings of diminutive stature who revered the old gods and inscribed sacred visages upon the ancient weirwood trees, and the giants who mostly remained reclusive in the untamed expanses of the far north. Then came the arrival of the first men. They migrated from Essos, traversing a land bridge known as the Arm of Dorne, bringing with them bronze weaponry, horses, and a blatant disregard for the sanctity of the weirwood groves. They commenced the felling of these sacred trees, a transgression that did not sit well with the children. What ensued was centuries of relentless conflict. The children were fewer in number and physically smaller, but they wielded potent magic. In their desperation, their greenseers convened and performed a ritual of such immense power that it shattered the Arm of Dorne itself, severing the land bridge and creating what we now know as the Stepstones. But it was not enough. The first men had already established a foothold, and they were resolute in their determination to remain. Around 10,000 years before Aegon's conquest, both sides reached the point of exhaustion. On the Isle of Faces, a small island nestled within the God's Eye Lake, the wise men of the first men and the greenseers of the children forged a peace agreement known as the Pact. The terms were straightforward. The first men were granted the open lands, the coastlines, and the mountains. The children retained dominion over the deep forests. Crucially, the first men pledged to cease the destruction of the weirwoods and embrace the worship of the old gods. Thus began the Age of Heroes, a period of unprecedented peace between the two races that would endure for 4,000 years. This was the era of legendary figures such as Lon the Clever, who, according to legend, cunningly swindled Casterly Rock from House Casterly. The founders of every great house familiar to you from Game of Thrones trace their lineage back to this mythical epic. But paradise is always fleeting. Around 8,000 years before Aegon's conquest, winter descended. Not a typical winter, but a winter of unimaginable severity, a winter that spanned an entire generation. Darkness engulfed the world, and from the lands of always winter, they emerged, the White Walkers. They brought with them a cold so profound that it froze the very seas. They raised the dead to swell their ranks, and they nearly annihilated humanity from the face of the earth. This was the Long Night, and it is the catalyst for everything that unfolds in this story. The first men and the children of the forest, former adversaries, united against this existential threat. The children provided weapons crafted from dragon glass, the only substance capable of slaying a walker. A legendary figure known as the Last Hero led the alliance, and at the Battle for the Dawn, they drove the White Walkers back into the remote, frozen wastes of the far north. But they understood that the threat had not been eradicated, only delayed. So Bran the Builder raised the Wall, a colossal structure of ice and ancient magic standing 300 meters tall, designed to forever bar the passage of the dead. The same man who built Winterfell and founded House Stark, a family sworn to guard the realms of men for 8,000 years, the Night's Watch was established to man the wall, and for 8 millennia they stood vigil. It is crucial to grasp this point. By the time of Game of Thrones, the Long Night had receded into the realm of legend. The Night's Watch had degenerated into a repository for criminals and outcasts. No one genuinely believed in the existence of the White Walkers anymore. But someone remembered, and that someone would dedicate 3 centuries to preparing for their inevitable return. While Westeros gradually recovered from the Long Night, a remarkable transformation was unfolding across the narrow sea. On a volcanic peninsula in Essos, a group of humble shepherds made a startling discovery. Dragons dwelling within the 14 flames, a chain of colossal volcanoes. Through the practice of blood magic, they learned to tame these magnificent creatures. And with dragons at their command, they forged the most formidable civilization the world had ever witnessed, the Valyrian Freehold. For nearly 5,000 years, Valyria reigned supreme over Essos. They crushed the Giscari Empire, literally salting the earth of Old Giz to ensure that nothing would ever grow there again. They conquered the Rhoynar, whose survivors, led by Princess Nymeria and her legendary 10,000 ships, sought refuge in Dorne. They constructed roads that still stand as testaments to their ingenuity, forged Valyrian steel using techniques now lost to time, and ruled through the power of their 40 noble Dragonlord families. But in 102 BC, all of it vanished in a single devastating day. The 14 flames erupted simultaneously. The peninsula shattered. The smoking sea swallowed what remained. Every dragon, every sorcerer, every record of Valyrian magic and history gone in an instant. This was the doom of Valyria, and only one family of Dragonlords survived. 12 years before the doom, in 114 BC, a young woman named Daenerys Targaryen experienced a prophetic dream. She envisioned Valyria consumed by fire, the 14 flames engulfing everything in their path. She confided in her father, Lord Eonar Targaryen. The Targaryens were not among the most powerful Dragonlord families. They were relatively minor nobility. So when Eonar announced his intention to sell everything and relocate his entire household to a remote, dreary island off the coast of Westeros, the other Dragonlords scoffed at him. They branded him a coward. 12 years later, they were all dead, and the Targaryens, ensconced on Dragonstone with 5 dragons, were the last Dragonlords in existence. They remained on that island for a century, observing as Essos descended into chaos during the Century of Blood, witnessing the emergence of the free cities from the ashes, watching Westeros fractured into 7 perpetually warring kingdoms. And then Aegon Targaryen gazed westward and saw something that would forever alter the course of history. This is where House of the Dragon adds a critical layer to the established lore. For centuries, historians had assumed that Aegon conquered Westeros out of sheer ambition. He craved power. He desired to rule. The typical motivations of a conqueror, but House of the Dragon revealed a truth passed down from monarch to heir as a sacred secret. Aegon had a prophetic dream. He saw the end of the world, a cataclysmic winter, death marching from the north, and he believed, with unwavering conviction, that only a united Westeros led by a Targaryen monarch could withstand the impending onslaught. The conquest wasn't driven by a thirst for glory, it was about survival. He even had it inscribed on a Valyrian steel dagger in glyphs that only became visible when the blade was heated. "From my blood come the prince that was promised, and his will be the song of ice and fire." That dagger, incidentally, is the very same dagger that Arya Stark uses to slay the Night King 300 years later. The same dagger inscribed with the prophecy of the threat is the weapon wielded to vanquish it. That is not a coincidence. That is the masterful storytelling of George R.R. Martin. In 2 BC, Aegon Targaryen and his sister wives Visenya and Rhaenys landed at the mouth of the Blackwater Rush with a small army and 3 dragons, Balerion the Black Dread, Vhagar, and Meraxes. What followed was less of a war and more of a stark demonstration of why one does not engage in combat with dragons. Harren the Black, the king who had just completed the formidable fortress of Harrenhal, refused to surrender. Aegon soared over the walls on Balerion and melted the towers with dragon fire. House Hoare was extinguished in a single night. At the Field of Fire, the combined armies of the Reach and the Westerlands, numbering 55,000 men, confronted all 3 dragons simultaneously. 4,000 men were incinerated alive. King Mern Gardner perished, ending his ancient lineage. The Lannisters surrendered. The King of the North, Torrhen Stark, marched south with 30,000 men. He witnessed the devastation at the Field of Fire, surveyed his army, gazed upon the dragons, and knelt. He is remembered as the king who knelt, but in reality he was simply a king who could do the math. Only Dorne offered sustained resistance, employing guerrilla tactics and concealing themselves within the desert. When Rhaenys flew Meraxes to the castle of Hellholt, a scorpion bolt pierced the dragon through the eye. Rhaenys perished in the fall. Dorne remained independent for another 200 years, eventually joining the realm through marriage rather than conquest. In 187 AC, Aegon was crowned in Oldtown. In 1 AC, after the conquest, he had the swords of his defeated enemies forged into the Iron Throne, and he passed down the secret of his dream to his heir and to their heir after them. The Targaryens were not merely ruling, they were waiting, preparing, but Aegon failed to foresee that his own family would nearly dismantle everything he had built. For 130 years, the Targaryen dynasty flourished. They weathered religious uprisings. They survived mad kings. They built roads and consolidated their power. By the reign of Jaehaerys I, known as the Conciliator, they had reached their zenith. Dragons filled the dragon pit. The realm was at peace. Then Jaehaerys died, and everything began to unravel. At a great council in 101 AC, the lords of Westeros were forced to choose between 2 heirs, Rhaenys Targaryen, who possessed the stronger claim but was a woman, and Viserys Targaryen, who had the weaker claim but was a man. They chose Viserys, establishing a precedent that the Iron Throne could not pass to a woman. This decision would haunt the realm 28 years later. Viserys. I named his daughter Rhaenyra as his heir. When he died in 129 AC, his second wife's faction crowned his son Aegon II instead. The realm fractured into 2 factions. Rhaenyra's supporters were known as the Blacks. Aegon's supporters were known as the Greens. What followed was the bloodiest conflict in Westerosi history since the Long Night. This is what House of the Dragon is currently depicting. Dragons, and then the mob. This moment, Rhaenyra, the Targ, some because of He was on the first, the second demon, but Darren and the war, they slew, they would the troop into this, and his squire, a bald boy called Egg, who is secretly Prince Aegon Targaryen, fourth son of Prince Maekar. This is the story that the show is adapting, and what makes it so captivating is that we know the eventual fates of these characters. The second Blackfyre Rebellion occurs in 212 AC at a tourney that serves as a secret cover for another uprising. Daemon 2 Blackfyre attempts to rally support, but Bloodraven has spies everywhere. The plot is crushed before it can even begin. This is the plot of The Mystery Knight, likely the subject of the show's third season. The third Blackfyre Rebellion takes place in 219 AC, crushed. In 233 AC, a great council convenes to determine the line of succession after multiple unexpected deaths. Prince Aegon, our little egg, becomes King Aegon V. Despite being the fourth son of a fourth son, he has lived among the common people. He understands their suffering. He endeavors to reform the realm to protect the small folk from their lords, but the lords resist. Without dragons, the king is merely a man with a crown. Also in 233 AC, Bloodraven is sent to the Wall. His crime, he had offered safe conduct to Aenys Blackfyre to present his claim at the Great Council, then had him executed upon his arrival. It was ruthlessly effective, may have saved the realm from yet another civil war, but it was also a betrayal of guest right, and the new king could not condone it even if Bloodraven had acted to protect the realm. He rises to become Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, and then, while ranging beyond the Wall, he vanishes. We will return to that. The fourth Blackfyre Rebellion erupts in 236 AC. Daemon 3 Blackfyre lands at Massey's Hook with the Golden Company. The rebellion garners almost no support. The Blackfyre cause is waning. King Aegon V rides out personally with his sons, and at the Battle of Wendwater Bridge, Sir Duncan the Tall, now Lord Commander of the King's Guard, slays Daemon III. The final attempt, the War of the Ninepenny Kings, unfolds in 260 AC when Malus the Monstrous, a Blackfyre who famously had a second vestigial head growing from his neck, launches one last invasion. A young knight named Barristan Selmy cuts a bloody swath through the Golden Company and kills Malus in single combat. The same Barristan Selmy who would later serve in Robert's King's Guard, then Joffrey's, then Daenerys's. The male line of House Blackfyre dies with Malus, but by then something far worse had already transpired. King Aegon V, Egg, was a good man who sought to improve the world. But without dragons, he could not compel the lords to accept his reforms. They thwarted him at every turn. So Egg became obsessed with bringing dragons back. In 259 AC, he gathered his family at Summerhall, a Targaryen summer castle. He possessed 7 dragon eggs. He had pyromancers. He had wildfire. He had sorcerers and ancient texts. We do not know exactly what transpired. The records are incomplete, possibly deliberately destroyed. What we do know is that something went catastrophically wrong. Fire engulfed the castle. King Aegon V perished. Prince Duncan perished. Sir Duncan the Tall, the hedge knight who became Lord Commander, died trying to save them. The dream of restored dragons died with them. But on that same night, amidst the flames and tragedy, Princess Rhaella went into labor. She gave birth to a son. They named him Rhaegar. And from his earliest days, Rhaegar was obsessed with prophecy, with Summerhall, with the prince that was promised, born while his great-grandfather's attempt to hatch dragons literally burned around him. He spent his youth poring over ancient texts, convinced that the answer to saving the world lay within his bloodline. This obsession would lead him to Lyanna Stark, to the Tower of Joy, to Robert's Rebellion, to Jon Snow. Rhaegar's father was Aerys II, the Mad King. He was not always mad. In his youth, he was charming, ambitious, full of plans for the realm. But over time, paranoia consumed him. He saw traitors everywhere. He developed a fondness for wildfire, for watching people burn. By the 280s, the realm was desperate, and quietly, a coalition of great lords was forming. This is the Southern ambitions theory. Observe the marriages being arranged in this generation. Brandon Stark to Catelyn Tully, Robert Baratheon to Lyanna Stark. Jaime Lannister was proposed for Lysa Tully before Aerys snatched him for the Kingsguard. four great houses binding themselves together through marriage: Stark, Tully, Baratheon, Arryn, and potentially Lannister. That is no coincidence. That is a coalition capable of deposing a king. Some believe that they intended to force a great council to remove Aerys and crown Rhaegar. Others think they were preparing for outright rebellion. We will never know for certain because events overtook them. Lord Went hosted the greatest tourney in living memory. Everyone was in attendance: the king, the prince, the lords of every kingdom. Something strange indeed occurred during the tournament's jousting matches, a ripple in the expected order of things that foreshadowed the chaos to come. A mystery knight cloaked in anonymity and valor appeared on the lists, the Knight of the Laughing Tree. This enigmatic figure, fueled by righteous indignation, unseated three knights whose squires had previously subjected a diminutive Crannogman to cruel bullying. The Mad King Aerys, his paranoia a festering wound upon his mind, took this incident as a personal affront, a challenge to his authority, perceived or otherwise. He dispatched Prince Rhaegar, his heir, to unmask and identify this mysterious knight. Most whisper even now that the Knight of the Laughing Tree was none other than Lyanna Stark, a spirited and independent woman disguised to right a wrong. Whether Rhaegar discovered her true identity remains shrouded in speculation, a secret perhaps taken to the grave. What transpired at the tourney's conclusion is undeniable, etched forever in the annals of Westeros. Rhaegar, the Dragon Prince, emerged victorious from the final joust, a champion crowned by skill and prowess. Tradition dictated that he, as the victor, would choose a queen of love and beauty, bestowing upon her a crown of winter roses. His wife, Elia Martell, Princess of Dorne, sat in the stands, the mother of his children, a woman of noble lineage and unwavering loyalty. The court held its breath, awaiting the expected gesture. But Rhaegar did the unexpected. He rode past Elia, past duty and expectation, and placed the crown of winter roses in Lyanna Stark's lap. The entire realm watched in stunned silence, the air thick with disbelief. This wasn't a romantic gesture, as the bards would later sing. This was a deliberate act, a political earthquake that would shatter the foundations of Westeros. The year that followed, Rhaegar and Lyanna vanished together, their disappearance igniting the powder keg that had been brewing for years. Whether Lyanna was abducted against her will or fled willingly into Rhaegar's arms is a question that continues to fuel debate, even now. However, the show seems to confirm she went willingly, eager to escape a life she did not desire. Brandon Stark, Lyanna's fiercely protective brother, was unaware of his sister's willing participation. Driven by rage and a sense of violation, he rode to King's Landing, demanding that Rhaegar emerge and face him in combat. Aerys, ever the volatile tyrant, had Brandon arrested for threatening the crown prince, an act of treason in his eyes. He then summoned Lord Rickard Stark, Brandon's father, to answer for his son's perceived crimes. What followed was an act of barbarity that cemented Aerys's reputation as the Mad King. Rickard was suspended in his armor over a raging fire, slowly roasted alive within his own steel cage. Brandon, forced to witness his father's agonizing death, was given a cruel choice. A device was placed around his neck, a cord attached to a sword just beyond his reach. The more he strained to grab the sword and save his father, the tighter the cord pulled, choking the life out of him. He strangled himself in a desperate, futile attempt to rescue his burning father. Aerys, his thirst for blood unsated, sent word to Jon Arryn, Lord of the Eyrie and Hand of the King, demanding the heads of his wards, Eddard Stark and Robert Baratheon. Instead of complying with the king's mad decree, Jon Arryn raised his banners in rebellion. The rebellion had begun, a war sparked by madness, fueled by injustice, and destined to reshape the very map of Westeros. The war raged for approximately a year. Robert Baratheon, a charismatic and formidable warrior, won 3 battles in a single day at Summerhall, his fury a force of nature. He was nearly trapped at the Battle of the Bells, a desperate engagement that saw his forces on the verge of annihilation until Ned Stark and the Tullys arrived to break the siege and rescue him. Finally, at the Trident, the decisive battle of the war, Rhaegar met Robert in single combat. Robert's warhammer, a weapon of brutal force, crushed Rhaegar's chest, shattering bone and ending the Targaryen prince's life. The rubies from his armor scattered into the river, staining the water crimson. a symbol of the blood spilled for a doomed love and a fallen dynasty. The crown prince died with Lyanna's name on his lips, a testament to the passion that had ignited a kingdom. King's Landing fell through treachery and calculated opportunism. Tywin Lannister, who had remained neutral throughout the conflict, arrived at the gates, feigning allegiance to the Targaryen cause, claiming to offer aid and protection. Once inside the city walls, his Lannister army unleashed a brutal sack, slaughtering and looting with savage abandon. Jaime Lannister, a Kingsguard sworn to protect Aerys, slew the Mad King to prevent him from igniting caches of wildfire hidden beneath the city, a catastrophic act of desperation that would have incinerated King's Landing and its inhabitants. Robert Baratheon claimed the Iron Throne, ushering in a new era. The Targaryen dynasty was seemingly over save for one last hidden secret. After the sack of King's Landing, Ned Stark rode south, driven by a desperate hope and a growing dread to find his sister. He found her at the Tower of Joy in Dorne, a remote and desolate location guarded by three of the finest knights of the Kingsguard, including the legendary Arthur Dayne, the Sword of the Morning. 7 men rode with Ned, brave and loyal companions. Only 2 survived the ensuing battle, a testament to the skill and ferocity of the Kingsguard. Inside the tower, Ned found Lyanna dying in a bed of blood, her life ebbing away. She had just given birth to Rhaegar's son, a true-born son, conceived in secret and legitimized by a secret marriage, a union that would have forever altered the line of succession had it been known. The baby's name was Aegon Targaryen, and Lyanna, with her dying breath, made Ned promise to protect him, to hide him from Robert's wrath, for Robert would kill any Targaryen heir to secure his claim to the throne. Ned brought the baby home to Winterfell and named him Jon Snow, his bastard son, a stain on his honor in the eyes of the world. A lie he maintained for 17 years, enduring the shame and whispers, all to keep his nephew safe, the prince that was promised, the child of ice and fire. You know this part of the story well. Robert's reign, Ned's death, the War of the Five Kings, the Red Wedding, and the rise of Daenerys Targaryen across the Narrow Sea. What truly matters for our purposes is what Daenerys accomplished that Aegon the Unlikely could not. She walked into a funeral pyre with 3 petrified dragon eggs, ancient relics thought to be nothing more than stone. She walked out with 3 living, breathing dragons, their roars echoing across the world. Magic, long dormant, returned to the world. After a century and a half of absence, dragons flew again, their shadows darkening the skies. Summerhall had failed, a tragic attempt to resurrect dragons through forbidden means. Blood magic, however, had succeeded, birthing the creatures that would change the course of history. And while the South tore itself apart, fighting for a chair made of swords, the true threat was awakening in the North, a darkness stirring beyond the Wall. Remember Bloodraven, Brynden Rivers, the spy master who crushed the Blackfyre Rebellions, a ruthless political operator who was eventually sent to the Wall only to disappear beyond it? Bran Stark found him, or rather was drawn to him. Brynden Rivers had become the Three-Eyed Raven, a being fused with a weirwood tree. His consciousness expanded across time and space, watching history unfold across centuries, waiting for the moment when he could pass his powers to someone who would need them. The political schemer who had played the Game of Thrones so ruthlessly for decades had spent the next century preparing for a war that had nothing to do with thrones, a war against an ancient darkness. Everything connects. In 305 AC, the Night King brought his army to the Wall, a vast horde of the undead driven by an insatiable hunger for life. He killed one of Daenerys' dragons, Viserion, and raised it as a white, a creature of ice and death. And with undead Viserion's blue fire, a flame that burned with unnatural cold, he melted the Wall at Eastwatch by the Sea. 8,000 years of protection, a barrier built with magic and sacrifice, ended in minutes, reduced to rubble by the icy breath of a reanimated dragon. The army of the dead marched south, an unstoppable tide of frozen corpses. Winterfell became the last line of defense, the final stand against the encroaching darkness. Stark, Targaryen, Lannister, Wildling, Dothraki, everyone who was left standing, united against a common enemy. The Battle of Winterfell was a slaughter, a horrific clash between the living and the dead. The dead kept coming, an endless wave of corpses driven by the Night King's will. The Night King walked through the carnage toward Bran Stark, the new three-eyed raven, to finish what he'd started 8,000 years ago, to erase the memory of humanity from the world. And then Arya Stark, trained as a faceless man, a deadly assassin capable of becoming anyone, wielding a Valyrian steel dagger inscribed with a prophecy from before the doom of Valyria, dropped out of the darkness and buried the blade in the Night King's chest. The same blade Aegon the Conqueror had inscribed with his dream, a vision of a future threatened by an ancient darkness. The same blade that had passed through history, through Viserys and Rhaenyra, through Robert's armory, through Littlefinger's scheming hands, to end up exactly where it needed to be, in the hands of the one who could wield it against the darkness. The prophecy said that the prince's song would be ice and fire, a union of opposing forces to defeat the encroaching darkness. Jon Snow, Aegon Targaryen, united the forces of ice and fire, his lineage bringing the dragons and the north together. Arya struck the blow that ended the long night. The song wasn't about one hero, one individual destined to save the world. It was about every choice made across 12,000 years, every act of courage and sacrifice, leading to one moment, one decisive act that would determine the fate of humanity. So that's the story. A tapestry woven from 12,000 years of history, a complex and intricate narrative of ambition, betrayal, love, loss, and sacrifice. Three threads woven together into a single powerful narrative. The prophecy thread stretching from Aegon's dream through Summerhall, through Rhaegar's obsession, to Jon Snow's birth, to the blade that ended the threat. The dragon thread rising from Valyria's glory, through the doom that destroyed it, through Aegon's conquest, through the dance of the dragons, through extinction, through Summerhall's failure, to Daenerys' miracle, the rebirth of dragons that would once again soar through the skies. The bastard thread originating with Aegon the Unworthy's legitimization of his bastards, through the Blackfyre Rebellions, through Brynden Rivers, Bloodraven, who spent decades playing the Game of Thrones more ruthlessly than anyone, crushing rebellions through spycraft and murder, and then spent the next century sitting in a cave beyond the wall, fused to a tree, waiting for a crippled boy who hadn't been born yet. The greatest political schemer in Westerosi history gave it all up to prepare for a war that had nothing to do with thrones, a war against the Long Night. And then there's Jon Snow, raised as a bastard to hide his true identity, the secret that held the key to uniting ice and fire, the embodiment of the prophecy. And now, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms shows us the middle chapter, the era when dragons were gone, but prophecy persisted when Bloodraven ruled from the shadows, when a hedge knight and a prince wandered Westeros, having adventures that would shape the future. Egg became a king who died trying to save the world, driven by a sense of duty and a desperate hope to prevent a coming darkness. Dunk became a legend, his bravery and honor inspiring generations to come, his descendants still carrying his blood, a testament to his enduring legacy. Bloodraven became something more than human, transcending his mortal form to become a guardian against the darkness, waiting for a Stark boy who hadn't been born yet, preparing him for the battle to come. Every story in this universe is the same story told across millennia, a recurring cycle of struggle and sacrifice, of light and darkness, of hope and despair. The struggle between ice and fire, between death and life, between forgetting and remembering. The Long Night came twice, threatening to extinguish all life and plunge the world into eternal darkness. Humanity survived both times, barely clinging to existence, a testament to their resilience and determination. And somewhere in the histories there's probably a Meister writing that the White Walkers were just a legend, a myth created to frighten children, that the wall fell due to structural issues and poor maintenance, that dragons never really existed, mere figments of the imagination. 8,000 years from now, when winter comes again, let's hope someone remembers the truth, remembers the sacrifices made, remembers the battles fought, remembers the lessons learned. Let's hope that someone remembers the song of ice and fire. And so, after 12,000 years of prophecy, dragonfire, rebellion, and sacrifice, we arrive at a simple truth. The story of Westeros was never just about kings or thrones. It was about memory, about survival, about the long struggle between ice and fire, and the small, fragile choices that shaped destiny across centuries. From Aegon's dream, to Summerhall, to Jon Snow's birth, to the dagger that ended the Long Night, every thread was woven together long before anyone realized it. But what do you think? Was it truly destiny that shaped these events? Or simply the consequences of human choices echoing across time? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this journey through Westerosi history relaxing or thought-provoking, please subscribe to Scottish Sleep Stories for more immersive tales from myth, legend, and history. Till next time, sleep well and remember the Song of Ice and Fire.